Hi, welcome to the second part of Chrontendo's Top 10 Worst Famicom and NES Games from the years 1983 to 1987. I'm Dr. Sparkle and we'll be taking a look at the final 4 games on the list. But first, some runners-up, games that are really terrible but not quite bad enough. Black Bass from Hot B. No, not the game released in the US under the name Black Bass. That was actually the more polished sequel. The original Japan-only Black Bass is about the most sleep-inducing fishing game ever, and that's saying a lot. Athena from SNK. The original arcade game wasn't exactly a classic, but the home version, ported by the infamous crappy contract programmer Micronix, is a glitchy, flickery mess, and one of the worst platformer games ever released for the system in the United States. Lost Word of Jenny from Takara. You hate Barbie games, right? Well, this game is based on the Japanese Barbie, Jenny. Apparently everyone hates Jenny because dogs attack her and guys in trench coats bump up into her. The actual platforming segments are among the most unplayable you'll ever encounter. Speaking of terrible platformers, this is Hana no Star from Victor. You control 2 insufferable douchebags who want to be pop stars. Unfortunately, deadly random objects are always falling out of the sky. So naturally, you further your singing career by killing every single fan, musician, or reporter you encounter by singing them to death. Spelunker, aka the game where you die if you fall more than about 3 pixels. You don't even have to hit the ground, you can actually die in midair. The level design is decent, but man, this game is a chore to play. And finally, Mirai Shinwa Jarvis, an amazingly ugly action RPG, where you control a Buzz Lightyear clone who fights enemies using a club. Shouldn't he have a laser gun? Later on, you put on wizard robes and go on stupid fetch quests. No, I didn't get on a ship, I entered an empty room with only 1 exit. What are you talking about? Alright, let's finish up the last 4 games. Number 4. At number 4 we have an entry which is a little different than the rest. Maybe it doesn't belong here, but this is my list and I think this game is just plain silly. Santa Claus no Takara Baku, or Santa Claus's Toy Box from Data East and Musical Plan Limited. This is one for the Famicom disk system, an add-on for the Famicom which allowed it to play floppy disks. Obviously, manufacturing a floppy is much cheaper than a cartridge, so lots of little publishers release tons of cheapy games. This is not a game, however, it's a virtual Christmas card creator. That's right, you type in the to and from fields, add a little message, then choose from 3 different backgrounds and musical themes. The result, an animated Christmas card. Stupid? Sure. A pointless waste of money? Definitely. At least this was pretty cheap. But then, there's something called Christmas games. Sounds promising? Well, these aren't even really games, more like random number generators. The bingo one just produces bingo numbers. Poker dice just rolls 5 dice. Presumably you are supposed to place bets in real life as to the results, but why do you need to turn on your TV and plug in a video game in order to roll some dice? This has got to be the least necessary Famicom or NES game we've ever seen. Number 3. If there's one game on this list that's synonymous with kusoge in Japan, that is, shitty games, it's this one, Takeshi no Chosencho from Taito. This was the first Famicom game to be based around a celebrity, in this case TV star, actor, and director Takeshi Kitano. Supposedly many ideas in the game came from a drunken Kitano himself. The result is perhaps the first deliberately unplayable video game, sort of an anti-game. Takeshi no Chosenjo is sort of an adventure game with a few action elements thrown in, but the requirements are so obscure, illogical, and just plain not fun, it makes Roberta Williams games look like the pinnacle of intuitive, sensible game design. You wander around town doing things like getting drunk until you black out, spending large amounts of money on things like music lessons, quitting your job, and playing pachinko, which actually requires you to lose all your ball bearings and then use the Famicom's built-in microphone to shout at the machine. Failure to complete any of these tasks will cause you to not be able to finish the game. The most infamous moment requires you to sing a karaoke song over and over until the audience arbitrarily decides it likes your performance. You have to do this 3 times. Game Center CX played this game on its very first episode, and it took Areno over half an hour to get through the karaoke part. Later, you need to wait for an hour without touching the controls, play the worst shoot-'em-up minigame ever known to man, and find your way through a cave with ridiculous hidden passages. The whole thing is literally impossible to finish without using the guidebook or a walkthrough. To top it off, the game is full of bugs, the graphics are hideous, and the music repetitive and unbearable. I don't know why Taito deliberately made a game this bad, but if they wanted to annoy gamers, they definitely succeeded. Number 2. There are tons of uninspired, dull RPGs on the Famicom, but none even come close to Hoshio Mirohitu, which must be, seriously, the worst Japanese RPG ever made. Almost every single thing that could be done wrong, this one does. The first village is invisible. There's simply no representation of it on the world map. You need to find it by accident. Once you start walking around, you'll realize your character moves painfully, almost comically slowly. You start at level 0 with no money and no equipment, and then almost immediately around the starting point, you'll find enemies that you simply do not stand a chance of defeating. Maybe you should run? Well, no, you can't. There's no run option in this game. You simply need to watch yourself get killed. So how bad is the interface in this game? Look at your hit points. Are those numbers not adding up right? That's because the last digit of your hit points simply is not displayed. So 10 hit points mean you have between 100 and 109 HP. There are simply too many problems to list here, but here's a few of them. When you exit a village or an area, you'll often find yourself magically transported back to the game's beginning point with no explanation. So you'll leave one village and reappear outside of the first village. You have 4 characters, but their inventories are completely separate. You cannot transfer items, weapons, or even gold between characters. You need to choose the order in which your party members fight at the beginning of every single fight. Just to kill off one weak enemy, you'll need to go through menus and pick your party's order. And the game's lack of balance is simply unbelievable. Once you've leveled up a bit, every single enemy can be killed in one hit. Then you'll stop leveling up because they give out so little experience. But then when you enter the second area of the game, enemy strength jumps up so much that you cannot do even 1 point of damage, even with the best weapons. There is simply no transition from super weak to super tough enemies. And the graphics, I've never seen a game where the background graphics give no indication as to what they were supposed to represent. Where am I here? Inside? Outside? In a cave? In a building? What are those yellow things? Is the blue stuff water? Everything is just random geometrical patterns. They didn't even try to make it look like anything. Oh yeah, and if you die and restart with a password, your level can actually drop. It's impossible to say if some of these problems are bugs or deliberate design decisions. Either way, I've never seen an RPG quite like this one before. And number 1. And finally, our top spot. The worst game for the system in the first 5 years is Ganzo Sayuki, Super Monkey Daiboken, from the obscure publisher VAP. Sayuki is the Japanese name for the Chinese novel we call Journey to the West in English. It concerns a monk, Xuan Song, and the Monkey King, Sun Wukong, and their journey to India. I called Takeshi Kitano's video game sort of an anti-game earlier, but the label probably fits this one a little bit better. It has many of the components of video games, such as Zelda or Dragon Quest. You move your characters around on an overworld, you have life bars, you randomly encounter enemies and engage in things that resemble battles. You will find houses with people and items inside. Later on, there are even bosses. But it's as if aliens found some 8-bit video games and tried to create their own without understanding why people actually played games. The individual pieces are there, but at its center, instead of there being some sense of fun or play or challenge, there's simply an empty void of nothingness. It resembles Zelda-style action-adventure games about as much as Penn & Teller's Desert Bus resembles racing games. As I mentioned, there are enemy battles, but the enemies simply run and jump around randomly while you hit them with your staff. After a while, they'll disappear. Is there any point to these battles? As far as I can tell, there is no money or experience in the game. And despite being a cartridge game, there appear to be loading screens after battles. But there are a lot of mysteries in this game. Why does the screen randomly change colors from time to time? Or how the hell are you supposed to know what to do? There doesn't appear to be any in-game guidance or hints. You'll see little houses on the overworld. Entering them will allow you to pick up supplies. If you run out of supplies in the middle of the desert, your party will die. There's a person in the house, but if you touch them, you'll exit the house. For the most part though, the game consists simply of walking around the vast, endless, empty overworld looking for something to do. Super Monkey Daiboken has quite a reputation in Japan. For Game Center CX, Areno played the game bit by bit over the course of an entire season, and viewers had to call in and try to assist him with the game. Out of all the games featured in this video, Super Monkey Daiboken is definitely the one I recommend you stay well away from. Its utter pointlessness makes it almost unique among video games. Well, there you have it, the 10 worst games of the years 1983 to 1987 for Nintendo's first console. I guess when we get to 1992 I'll do another list. Until then, for many more 8-bit Nintendo games, including some good ones, check out the Chrontendo site. Thanks for watching.